A young girl was left alone. But the past hadn't let her go. The land still remembered her. And now, survival wasn't enough. She had to protect a legacy. We're just a few steps away from reaching 1,500 subscribers, and we'd be honored to have you with us. Thank you to every kind soul who's joined us so far. With your support, we share peaceful, heartfelt stories that warm the soul. If you enjoy calm, meaningful stories, don't forget to subscribe. You're part of this family now. Now, make yourself comfortable. It's time for the story. The smell of blood came crawling over the grass with the wind. Helena stumbled forward through the knee-high weeds. Her vision was hazy, her arms exhausted, and the rifle in her hand was barely staying in her grip. Behind her, the burned remains of her family's cabin were still smoldering under the moonlight. The flames were gone, but the horror still surrounded her. She was running like a ghost because stopping meant dying. A gunshot tore through the night. A bullet hit the ground right in front of her feet. Helena's heart started pounding like it was about to break through her chest. She had no idea where she was going, only that she had to keep moving into the dark. As the trees thickened, the bushes scratched her legs. Thorns ripped at her clothes, but she didn't stop. She was out of breath, her lungs burning, eyes filled with tears. Still, she didn't stop. Not until there was no sound left, only the thump of her own heartbeat. She collapsed into a dried-out creek bed. Her hands, caked in mud, clutched the earth as she leaned against a cold rock. Her whole body was shaking. Moonlight filtered through the trees, making the shadows move like they were alive. Every snap, every rustle sent her heart into a panic again. Old legends her mother used to whisper came back to her, tales of spirits and creatures in the shadows. Helena had never believed them, until now. A twig snapped. She raised her rifle and stood up. Her fingers trembled on the trigger. There was a man standing in front of her. Even in the darkness, he was clear, tall, dark-skinned, his hair braided with eagle feathers. His posture was straight, and his eyes were deep and searching. There was no fear in his gaze, and no sign of hostility. He just watched Helena in silence. "You're lost," he said in a low, deep voice. Helena swallowed hard. Her throat was dry, her voice cracked. "They killed my family," was all she could say. Her eyes filled up, but she didn't cry. Her face was covered in ash, dust, and fury. The man turned around without a word and started walking away. Helena didn't move. Why should she trust him? What if he was one of the men who'd been hunting her? What if this was a trap? But strangely, her instincts were quiet. Even though she could barely stand, her feet moved on their own. She started walking after him. They walked through the night. As the moon slowly set, the path narrowed, winding between rocks. The trees thinned out, and the silence grew heavier. Finally, they reached a campsite hidden between tall cliffs. Small fires burned. Silent, shadowy people fell quiet when they saw Helena. She felt every eye on her like a stranger, like a ghost no one had invited. But the man spoke. He walked up to an old woman and whispered a few words. The woman stared long at Helena, then bowed her head. "My name is Cheyenne," the man said. "You can stay here until you're strong." It didn't sound like an offer, it sounded like a decision. Helena could only nod. She stepped into the rough tent they gave her. Inside were thick furs and old blankets. Her whole body was aching, but finally, exhaustion took over. Just before her eyes closed, she heard a sound outside, a voice like the wind, speaking in a language she didn't know. In that space between dream and waking, she remembered her mother saying, "The earth remembers everything." But that night, Helena wasn't just falling asleep. She was stepping into her fate. In the morning chill, Helena woke to a kind of silence she wasn't used to. There was life outside the tent, but nothing was rushed. Every step, every glance seemed to have meaning. She splashed cold water on her face, as if trying to shake off the strange dreams from the night. She couldn't remember what she looked like in a mirror anymore. She wasn't the same person. She wasn't just a girl on the run anymore, she was someone who had to survive. Cheyenne was waiting for her, standing still, like a rock. "We're starting your training," he said. "I have a gun," Helena replied, a flicker of old courage in her voice. Cheyenne looked into her eyes. "A weapon isn't just in your hands. If your mind hesitates, it's death even if your finger's on the trigger." They walked through the forest. The ground was slightly damp, birds chirping faintly in the distance, but it wasn't peace. It was the tension within silence. Cheyenne handed her a bow and a few arrows. Heavy, unbalanced, unfamiliar. Her fingers turned red, pulling the string. The first arrow landed in the dirt. The second fell without even touching a tree. Kian's face didn't change. No approval, no disappointment. Again, was all he said. Hours passed. Helena's hands blistered. Her arms ached. Sweat burned her forehead. But the voice in her head wasn't stopping her anymore. It wasn't telling her to give up. There was no room left for it. Every missed shot made her family's memory fade a little more. And every solid hit whispered that she was earning a place in this world. Back at camp, she could feel the eyes on her. Silent judgment, murmurs. A white girl. She could only mean trouble. Some prayed, others turned their backs. Even the children stared from afar, clinging to their mothers. When Kian's elderly mother, Ada, handed Helena a bowl of warm broth, it was the first time she saw a face without hardness. Ada looked into her eyes and said, "If your soul isn't dirty, the earth will accept you." But not everyone agreed. That night, as Helena sat by the fire, a group of young warriors approached. One of them, David, squinted at her. "They'll come because of you. We didn't even know their path before." Helena sat up straight. "I didn't want this. They killed my family. And now you've put ours at risk. Do you even realize that?" David cut in. The others looked tense too. Helena didn't respond. She slowly set her spoon back in the bowl. Because they were right. But being right didn't show her the way forward. Just then, Kian stepped in. "Enough." With a single word, everyone went silent. Kian turned to Helena with only his eyes and said, "Be ready. If not tonight, then the next. The moon leaves no trail, but your escape did." At midnight, a dog barked, and the silence shattered. A warrior came running, breathless, eyes wide with fear. "Tracks," he said. "Fresh. Not many, but they're coming." It was like even the sky answered. Clouds thickened, stars disappeared. Kian grabbed his weapon. Helena found her rifle too. This time, it wasn't just for her. These people had taken a risk for her. She owed them. "Defending yourself isn't enough," Kian told her. "If you don't want to be the first victim, you need to be the first to strike." Helena nodded. Shadows moved in the night. Footsteps, rustling bushes, metal gleaming in the dark. This was her reality now. And this time, she had no intention of running. When the moon slipped out from behind the clouds, the camp was already in motion. Women were quietly moving the children away. Warriors were preparing their weapons, and every eye was locked on the sounds coming from within the shadows. Helena had taken position behind a rock next to Kian. The rifle felt heavy in her hands, but this time, it was different. For the first time, she wasn't holding it out of fear, but by choice. "How many could there be?" she whispered. Kian didn't answer. His eyes were locked on a point in the darkness. Then his lips moved. "Enough." The first silhouette emerged from the shadows. The enemy's footsteps crunched the dry leaves as they approached. Helena's heart pounded in her chest. Her fingers were on the trigger, her breathing controlled. Then, a shot. The first bullet came from the rifle of the warrior next to Kian. The response came quickly. The darkness lit up with bullets and gunpowder. Helena fired not out of fear, but with focus. Her first shot grazed the dirt, but her second hit a shadow. The man screamed and collapsed. Helena's ears rang, but there was nothing else to do now. She had no choice left but to fight for survival. When a figure charged toward her, time seemed to slow. Helena stood, aimed. For a moment, her eyes locked with his. Eyes. Human eyes. Anger, fear, darkness. She pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The man dropped without a sound. Her breath caught. A twist in her stomach, shaking hands. But she didn't fall. She stayed on her feet. "You don't forget the first one," said Kian. There was no judgment in his voice. No mercy either. But sometimes, not forgetting is a way to live. The attack was short but intense. The enemy was small in number, but brutal. They hadn't just come for Helena, they were after something deeper. When the silence returned, the ground was littered with bodies, both strangers and familiar faces. Helena swallowed hard when her eyes landed on David's bloodied body. The boy who had blamed her just hours ago now lay quietly beneath the earth. Kian approached, his hands stained with blood. "It's not over," he said. "That was just the first wave. There are more coming. Bigger, more ruthless." Helena noticed her own bloody hands. She was still gripping her rifle tightly. "Because of me," she said in a rough voice. Kian shook his head. "No, not because of you. They've always been there. We just can't close our eyes anymore. That night, the camp was quiet. The wounded were tended to, the dead were covered. Helena sat off to the side, holding her mother's old journal in her hands. She had always thought the symbols and markings were just scribbles. But now they seemed to mean something. Kian approached. He didn't speak at first. Then he sat down beside her. I want to show you something, he said. But first I have to ask, do you really want to belong to this land? Helena looked up. She was tired, but determined. Yes. Kian placed a hand on his chest and pulled out a small, round medallion. Not metal carved from bone, with a spiral design in the center. This belonged to my mother's mother, and it matches the symbols in your mother's journal. Helena's breath caught. She opened the pages and pointed to the spiral. You. How? Some paths are drawn not by time, but by blood, Kian said. And your past is older than you think. Helena couldn't say anything, because now, it wasn't just were looming over her but a greater truth. Who was she? Why did these symbols feel familiar? And why did this land feel like both a threat and a home? Kian stood. We leave tomorrow, not just to survive, but to understand the past. Helena held the rifle in her lap. The moon came out from behind the clouds once more, and Helena was no longer just a fighter, she was a question. Answers were coming. And maybe, just maybe, answers always came with blood. Dawn came with a gray sky. The smell of smoke from the night still hung in the air. The camp was quiet. The fallen had not yet been buried. Grief had not yet found words. But Helena knew it was no longer the time to stay behind. She slung the rifle over her shoulder, tucked her mother's journal under her belt, and looked into Kian's eyes. I'm ready. Kian nodded without a word. They set out before the sun rose. In the silence, the only sound was the crunch of their boots on the earth. There was no path. They moved through wild grass and thorns between the trees. It was as if Kian could read what the ground was saying. Every turn, every step seemed intentional. Helena just followed both the path and her fate. Do you remember the symbols written in your mother's journal? Kian asked eventually. Some of them, said Helena. But most just seem like drawings. I don't know what they mean. Kian picked up a small stone from beneath a bush. On it was the same spiral shape. This, in our language, means the heart of the land. It means protector, watcher, one who does not forget. This symbol, it doesn't only belong to the people who live here. So, my mother. Helena's voice trembled. She was from here? Kian stopped. Some people aren't called to the place they were born, but to the place they belong. Maybe your mother carried the blood of those once connected to this land. Maybe her escape was your return. Helena turned her head. The forest suddenly looked different. The trees seemed taller, the wind more conscious. It felt like something beneath the soil was watching her. She began to step more carefully. They walked all day. In the afternoon, they reached a hidden pass between rocky hills. The wind blew differently here, like it was whispering. Kian walked ahead, but more cautiously now. We're close, he said. The narrow pass curved inward and led them to a wide clearing surrounded by stone walls. In the center stood a large, solid rock. On it were markings untouched by time, spirals, curves, waves. All of them were in Helena's journal. And in the very center, a shape Helena had doodled over and over as a child. A female figure holding the spiral symbol. As Helena stepped closer, something changed. The wind stopped. The air grew heavy. The symbols on the rock began to glow with a faint light so subtle it lasted only a blink, but it was enough. Helena placed her hand on the rock. It wasn't warm, but it felt alive. It pulsed, like a heartbeat. What's happening? She whispered. Kian's voice was low but steady. This place only recognizes those it chooses. Maybe your mother never came here. But why did she know these symbols, right? Because something whispered to her. Just like it's whispering to you now. Helena closed her eyes. She remembered the strange voices she'd heard at night. The faceless shadows from her dreams. The symbol on the rock was exactly like the one she used to carve into her mother's desk. In that moment, Helena realized her past wasn't just a burned house. She had been born from those ashes, but her story was much older. Maybe her destiny wasn't just revenge or survival, it was remembering a legacy. Just then, a distant sound echoed. Horse hooves. Fast and many. Helena opened her eyes. Kian had already turned his head. They found us, he said. How so quickly? Helena asked, her breath quickening. Because they're no longer looking for you, said Kian. His eyes held a hard truth. Now they want this place. This ground. This stone. And if they take it, not just you, but your past will be lost. Helena reached for her rifle, but this time she was holding onto more than a weapon. She was holding onto that memory. This was no longer just a battle, it was a fight to remember, to protect what had been forgotten before it vanished. And the wind blew again. This time, it carried no whisper. It carried resolve. But this time, it wasn't the sound of nature. As the horse's hooves struck the ground, the heart of the earth trembled. The vibrations echoed off the cliffs like screams from the past. Helena had her back against the large stone pillar. She was gripping her rifle, but her gaze was fixed far ahead beyond the pass. Cheyenne was silent, as always. But this time, the silence wasn't to hide his thoughts. It was weighed down by the burden of decisions. How many are there? Helena asked. At least 12, Cheyenne said. But the number isn't the real issue. One of them. I know him. Helena turned to him. Cheyenne's eyes seemed stuck in the past. Who? Arvid. The name meant nothing to Helena, but it did to Cheyenne. He used to be one of us. We shared the same fire, swore the same oath to the land. Then came money, gold, and guns. He sold his soul, and now he returns, breaking the oaths we once made. And when he sees you? Helena asked. He won't. Or if he does, it'll be too late. Helena saw the darkness in his eyes. This battle wasn't just about land. It was Cheyenne facing his own past. He would either bury an old friend or an old version of himself. Because the pass was narrow, they could turn the enemy's numbers into a disadvantage. Archers were placed up on the stone ledges. Helena moved into the position Cheyenne pointed out. He handed her a knife short, curved, handmade. This might be your last chance, said Cheyenne. If you want to turn back, now's the time. I already came back, said Helena. Don't you see? This is my land now. As the words left her mouth, a horn screamed like a warning. Horses neighed. Guns fired. The first bullet hit the rocks, and then chaos erupted. Helena fired. She held her breath, aimed, squeezed the trigger. One man fell, then another. But the enemy didn't stop. Arvid led the charge, black hair blowing in the wind, eyes locked straight on the stone. They wanted to destroy it. Because if you erase the past, you erase the people too. The circle around the stone grew tighter. An explosion brought part of the cliff down. Through the smoke, Helena suddenly realized she was alone. Cheyenne had gone down. He was searching for Arvid, taking down enemies one by one, but moving toward his real target. Helena heard a sound behind her. Before she could turn, someone grabbed her. A knife pressed to her throat. The enemy said nothing. Her rifle dropped to the ground. She slowly raised her hands. Don't scream, the man said. I just want the stone. The rest doesn't matter to me. But it mattered to Helena. This whole fight, all the deaths were not just for the stone. No, it was for what the stone represented. A past. A belonging. Fear turned to anger. She slammed her foot backward into his knee. He lost balance. She twisted her body and grabbed the knife. Blood flowed, but she didn't feel it. She elbowed his jaw, then snatched the blade from his hand. They locked eyes. And then, it was over. The man fell. Helena stood with the knife in her hand. For the first time, she had taken someone down in close combat. Her hands trembled, but her heart was steady. Amid the echoing blasts, on the other side of the rock, Cheyenne and Arvid finally faced each other. I told you, this stone will destroy you, said Cheyenne. No, said Arvid. It's those like you stuck in the past who will be destroyed. The world is changing. There's no room left for spirits. And what about justice? Cheyenne asked. Justice is weighed in gold, Arvid replied, raising his weapon. But before he could pull the trigger, an arrow struck him in the chest. Helena had aimed from above. Her eyes were full. As Arvid fell, Cheyenne bowed his head. Some burdens are carried together, he said. The fighting stopped. The enemies pulled back. The stone still stood. But Helena knew this was only a victory. The war itself wasn't over. When they returned to the camp's broken remains, everyone was silent. The dead were buried, fires lit. Helena stood in front of the stone. She opened the journal and looked once more at the symbols her mother had drawn. The heart of the stone, she whispered. Cheyenne approached from behind and placed a hand on her shoulder. Are you ready? He asked. Helena closed her eyes. More than ever. As the sun rose, the sky opened like a crimson shawl. Ash still hung in the air. Helena knelt in front of the stone pillar, holding the journal open. She no longer saw the symbols as mere shapes. Each one represented a story, a person, a voice. They were all speaking to her, not just through blood ties, but through a connection forged by land, history, and pain. Kian watched her for a long time before approaching. The weight on Helena's shoulders no longer seemed heavy. She was carrying the legacy of another woman, her mother, her grandmother, or maybe an ancestor from long ago. "I won't leave you here," Kian said. Helena looked up. "You're not leaving me. I'm staying." Kian's eyes deepened. "Is this your home now?" "This was always my home," Helena said. "I just had to walk through fire to remember it." That morning, the camp was rebuilt. The wounded were tended to, the dead honored. Women whispered prayers into the earth. Children smiled again. But Helena's mind didn't rest for a moment. As she traced the spiral on the stone, her mother's voice echoed in her ear, "We don't own this land. We're only its storytellers." Later in the day, Kian called for her again. "Come," he said. "I'll show you the heart of the past." This time, the walk wasn't long. Behind the stone pillar, hidden between thick bushes, was the entrance to a cave. Narrow and low-ceilinged, but once they entered, Helena's breath caught. Along the walls were paintings. Animals, people, stars. And again, that spiral. With emotion, Kian led her deeper. There, on a small altar, rested a stone pendant. The same motif. The same warmth. When Helena reached for it, the stone began to throb like a heartbeat. "This," said Kian, "belonged to a woman from your bloodline. She lived here 100 years ago. Her name was Maria. She was one of the protectors of the land. Her memory, her strength, now lives in you." Helena placed the pendant around her neck. Something shifted. A deep silence settled inside her, not the silence of fear, but of acceptance, of belonging. She was no longer a refugee or someone on the run. She too was a protector now. When they stepped outside, the sky had turned golden. Kian didn't speak for a while. Then he said quietly, "A new trail is coming." Helena noticed it instantly. "An enemy?" Kian shook his head. "No, something else. Silent, hidden in shadow. Maybe we destroyed them, but our presence is now known." The stone glowing again, that was a sign. And in this land, signs aren't seen only by friends. This time, Helena didn't reach for her rifle. She just narrowed her eyes and looked toward the horizon. "They'll come," she said. "But I won't be alone this time." Kian smiled. "For the first time. No, you're not alone anymore." Helena returned to her tent, wrapped her mother's journal carefully in cloth, and buried it beneath the stone pillar, deep in the earth. "You can rest now," she whispered. "I'm here." Later that night, stories were told around the campfire for the children. Helena sat nearby. She used to be just a listener. Now, she was a storyteller. And her story was only just beginning. The wind blew again, not frightening this time, but familiar. It was as if the land was saying thank you. The stars in the sky seemed to shine brighter. And Helena, no longer just a shadow of the past, had become a light for the future. The end. By the way, we noticed something small. Most people who watch these stories aren't actually subscribed to the channel. Maybe we get caught up in the moment, or just forget to hit the button. But your support truly helps us keep creating stories like this. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.